You don't sit on the throne. You stand behind the curtain. Kings bow to the crowd, and you whisper to the king which head in the crowd to chop off. You're not painted in portraits. You're not mentioned in decrees. But every decree is written by your hand. You are the Grey Cardinal. And this is your entire life. France, 1577. You weren't born in a gutter or a palace. You're a minor nobleman. Your name is François Leclerc du Tremblay. Remember it, because soon the world will forget it. And in place of a name, a nickname will appear that will outlive centuries. Your father wants you to become a soldier. You receive a brilliant education: Latin, diplomacy, fencing. At 17, you take part in the siege of Amiens. You watch soldiers die for other people's ambitions. You understand, a sword can kill one man, but a word can destroy an entire army. At 22, you make a decision that shocks your family. You enter a monastery, the Order of Capuchins, the harshest of all Catholic orders. A coarse robe, a rope instead of a belt, bare feet on stone floors. You renounce your titles, your inheritance, your name. Now you are Father Joseph, just a monk. But kings don't fear simple monks. In the monastery, you live on your knees. 4 hours of prayer at dawn, rough food once a day, sleep on bare planks. You whip yourself bloody to kill your pride. But you didn't kill your pride. You disguised it. Capuchins walk barefoot, even in winter. Your soles harden into bark, like the bottom of a boot. After 5 years, you feel neither cold nor pain. This isn't humility. This is training. You're tempering your body like a blade. Your weapon is not a sword, but patience. You begin to preach. Crowds come to hear you. Your voice is quiet, but there's steel in it. You speak of God, but between the lines, of power. You persuade people so skillfully that they think the decision was their own. It's a gift, or a curse. You create a women's religious order, the Daughters of the Holy Cross. Under the cover of piety, you build a network. Nuns travel across France. They hear confessions, collect rumors, pass along information. This is not a religious order. This is the first intelligence network in Europe under religious cover. Nobody suspects a nun. Nobody searches a convent cell. And in those cells lie encrypted letters that change the fates of nations. 1609. In the small town of Luçon, you meet the man who will change your life. His name is Armand Jean Duplessis, the future Cardinal Richelieu. Right now, he's nobody. A broke bishop, forgotten at court. But you see in his eyes what nobody else sees: cold calculation and raging ambition. You're alike. You're both smarter than everyone around you, and you both know it. But there's a difference. Richelieu wants power on display. The red robe, the golden cross, courtiers bowing. You need real power, the kind that doesn't require applause. Between you, an alliance forms unlike anything history has ever seen. He's the face. You're the brain in the shadows. He signs the orders. You draft them. He delivers the speeches. You write every word. Richelieu trusts you without limit. You're the only person in his life he believes. Everyone else is a pawn, even the king. A joke circulates at court. The only ones allowed into the cardinal's chambers without an appointment are Father Joseph and the cats. You walk through every door, and behind every door you leave an invisible trace. People begin to fear you, not because you threaten them, but because you know everything. 1624. Richelieu becomes prime minister under Louis XIII. The king is weak, indecisive, under the influence of his mother, Marie de Médicis. Richelieu runs France, but who runs Richelieu? You. Every morning you wake up at 4, prayer before the crucifix, then to the desk. On the desk, encrypted dispatches from agents in London, Madrid, Rome, Vienna. You read them the way others read the morning paper, except this paper contains secrets people kill for. Your intelligence network spans all of Europe. Capuchin monks are in every country. They preach, hear confessions, treat the sick. And along the way, they collect information. Who met with whom? Who wrote a letter to whom? Who's plotting a conspiracy? Your agents penetrate the most guarded courts. The Spanish ambassador thinks he's talking to a harmless monk. The monk nods, consoles, and memorizes every word. By evening, a dispatch is already on your desk. Richelieu used to say, "Anyone who learns my thoughts must die." But you knew all his thoughts, and you're the only one who stayed alive, because you weren't just a spy. You were the architect of the entire system. France is surrounded by enemies. The Spanish Habsburg Empire, a colossus that wants to crush you from both sides. Spain to the south, the Holy Roman Empire to the east. Inside the country, the Protestant Huguenots, who've created a state within a state. The fortress of La Rochelle is their capital. England supplies them with weapons. France could collapse like a house of cards. And you take this on yourself. Richelieu besieges La Rochelle, the Great Siege of 1627. A dam a mile long is built to cut the city off from the sea. The English try to break the blockade. They fail. The city starves. Out of 28,000 inhabitants, 5,000 will survive. The rest will die of hunger. And while all this happens, you're negotiating. You convince the Pope not to intervene. You intimidate the Spanish ambassador. You blackmail the English agent with intercepted letters. All of this simultaneously. You're playing chess on 5 boards at once, and you're winning on every single one. La Rochelle falls. The Protestants lose their military power. France is united. Richelieu gets the glory. And you get what you value more than glory: a new assignment. The 30 Years' War. All of Europe is burning. Catholics slaughter Protestants. Protestants slaughter Catholics. Germany is turning into a wasteland. A third of the population will perish. And you are one of the chief conductors of this carnage. They call you the conductor of the 30 Years' War. You're Catholic to the bone. You dream of a new crusade against the Ottoman Empire. But for that, you need a strong, united Europe under French leadership. And the Habsburgs are in the way. So you make a decision that makes the Pope's jaw drop. Catholic France backs Protestant Sweden against the Catholic Habsburgs. You personally negotiate with the Swedish King Gustavus Adolphus. You promise him money, weapons, support. In return, he invades Germany and crushes the imperial armies. Your own fellow believers curse you. You're helping heretics kill Catholics. But you don't care. The end justifies the means. You're not a fanatic. You're a strategist. You use faith as a tool, not a limitation. And when monks whisper about your betrayal, you whisper back, "All for France, all for a greatness that will outlive us all." 1630. The Diet of Regensburg. This is the council of rulers of the Holy Roman Empire. Princes, cardinals, ambassadors have gathered here. The fate of Europe is being decided. Richelieu sends you as France's envoy. You're a monk in a filthy robe among velvet and gold. They look at you with contempt. A barefoot beggar at the table of kings. But you know more about each of them than their own wives do. You know the Bavarian duke owes money to bankers, that the Saxon elector is sleeping with his general's wife, that the papal legate is secretly corresponding with Madrid. Information is a weapon, and you never miss. In 3 weeks, you dismantle the Habsburg coalition. You pit allies against each other. You bribe some and blackmail others. When you leave Regensburg, the imperial chancellor says, "This barefoot Capuchin disarmed me with his rosary. He stuffed 6 ducal crowns into his hood." They fear you. They hate you, but they can't stop you, because you can't strike a shadow. And that's what you are. A shadow that controls the light. Your methods? You use everything. Bribery, blackmail, lies, slander, even murder. Nothing is beneath you. You intercept letters, forge documents, send poisoners. You pit people against each other like fighting dogs and watch who survives. The survivor you recruit. You enlist agents among courtiers, merchants, priests, prostitutes. Any person is a potential source of information. A maid hears a conversation through a door. A stable hand sees who arrived at night. A cook notices the master isn't eating, which means he's nervous, which means he's planning something. You gather these crumbs into a mosaic, and it forms a picture that nobody sees but you. You invented an encryption system for dispatches. Each agent knows only their piece of the puzzle. If they're captured and tortured, they can only reveal their part. The full picture is known only to you and Richelieu. No one else. You live in Richelieu's apartments, in his country house in Rueil, but your cell looks like a prison. Bare walls, a crucifix, a hard bed. You could live like a king. You choose to live like a monk. This isn't humility. This is camouflage. 1630, the day of the dupe. November 11th. Marie de Medici, the king's mother, decides to destroy Richelieu. She's certain of victory. The king promised her he'd remove the cardinal. The court is already celebrating Richelieu's downfall. The entire party of the devout, the pro-Spanish clique at court, is rubbing its hands. Richelieu is in a panic. He's preparing his resignation and escape. And then you appear. You know something Richelieu doesn't. Your agents have reported Louis is wavering. He promised his mother, but he hasn't signed a single document. The king can be managed. You tell Richelieu, don't give up, go to Versailles, talk to the king alone. Richelieu goes. One conversation changes everything. Louis chooses the cardinal over his mother. Marie de Medici is sent into exile. Forever. The party of the devout is crushed. And those who were celebrating Richelieu's fall that morning find themselves in the Bastille by evening. That's why it's called the Day of the Dupe. The duped were those who thought they'd won. Richelieu stays in power for 12 more years. And the entire time, you stand behind him, invisible, indispensable, immortal, as long as the cardinal lives. How the court sees you. The courtiers hate you with a refined, exquisite venom. You're a monk who commands dukes. You're a barefoot beggar whose single word can end careers. They call you the Grey Eminence, in contrast to Richelieu's Red Eminence. The Red Cardinal wears a scarlet robe, a golden cross, a ruby ring. You wear a dirty habit and a rope around your waist. But everyone knows, behind the dirty habit lies more power than behind the red robe. Contemporaries describe you like this. His conversation was captivating, and his manner with people was endlessly skillful. You never raise your voice. You never threaten directly. You speak quietly, politely, with monastic humility. And people leave your presence in a cold sweat, not understanding that they just signed their own death warrant. In the famous painting by Jean-Léon Gérôme, The Grey Eminence, you descend a palace staircase. Courtiers in silk and velvet bow to you, a filthy monk. One holds his hat to his chest. Another presses himself against the wall. They're afraid of even your shadow. That painting is a perfect portrait of your life. Power without a crown. Fear without violence. You dreamed of a crusade. That was your true goal. Not France, not Richelieu, not politics. You wanted to unite Europe and lead it eastward. Destroy the Ottoman Empire. Liberate the Holy Land. Return Jerusalem to the Christians. For this, you were prepared to do anything. Support Protestants? Yes. Unleash war in Germany? Yes. Destroy the Habsburgs? Yes. All for the greater purpose. You used evil as a tool for good. At least, that's what you told yourself. Every night, kneeling before the crucifix, you prayed for forgiveness. For the bribery, the blackmail, the deaths you ordered. You believed God would forgive you because you were acting in His name. That was your justification. And your curse. You're a mystic who kills, an ascetic who topples empires, a monk who pits nations against each other for a holy war that will never happen. The crusade remained a dream. Europe didn't unite. It drowned in the blood of the 30 Years' War. And you stood on the shore of that bloody sea and understood. You created a monster you couldn't stop. Conspiracies. They never stop. Not for a single day. The king's brother, Gaston of Orléans, is an eternal plotter. He wants to overthrow Louis and get rid of Richelieu, but he's cowardly and stupid. Every time a conspiracy is exposed, Gaston betrays his accomplices with tears in his eyes. He swears eternal love to the cardinal, and 6 months later, he starts a new plot. You unravel every thread. You find the couriers, intercept the letters, identify the traitors. The Chalais conspiracy exposed. Chalais executed. The Montmorency conspiracy exposed. Montmorency executed. Marshal Marillac exposed. Executed. The Duchess of Chevreuse, unmasked, flees to England. You track every branch of every conspiracy. Your tentacles stretch to London, Madrid, Brussels. The conspirators think they're clever, but they don't know that their own servants work for you. Their confessors report the contents of confessions to you. Their mistresses repeat pillow talk. You see a conspiracy before its participants even manage to meet. You're a spider at the center of a web, and every strand trembles when a fly lands on the edge. Your daily routine. You wake at 4 in the morning, an hour of prayer in absolute darkness, then to the desk. Encrypted dispatches. You decode ciphers you invented yourself. No single codebreaker knows the entire key. At 6 in the morning, a briefing with Richelieu. You sit together in a study buried in papers. He talks, you listen. Then you talk, and he listens. You're two brains in one body of state. After the briefing, meetings with agents. They come through the back entrance, in hoods, one at a time. You hear each one out. You memorize everything. You write nothing down. Paper is evidence. Memory is invulnerable. Lunch, a bowl of broth and a piece of bread. You eat standing up in 5 minutes. Time is the only resource that can't be stolen. After lunch, diplomatic correspondence. You write letters to ambassadors, kings, papal legates. Every word is calibrated like a formula for poison. Polite, but with a hidden meaning. Those who understand will comply. Those who don't will regret it. In the evening, prayer again. You kneel before the crucifix and your lips whisper psalms. But your mind is counting moves. Always counting moves. Even in your sleep. You're growing old. You're 60. In the 17th century, that's deep old age. Your body is worn out like an old cloak. The feet that walked barefoot on stone for 30 years can no longer hold you. The back that bent 1,000 times in prayer won't straighten. The eyes that read millions of encrypted dispatches are nearly blind. But the mind works. The mind is the only thing you have left. Richelieu petitions for your cardinal's hat. For years he asks the Pope. The papal curia hates you. You're their enemy. You helped Protestants. You schemed against Rome. They refuse again and again. Finally, in 1638, the Pope gives in. You receive the red hat. Now you're a real cardinal. No longer the gray eminence, but a full prince of the church. But it's too late. In the spring, the first stroke hits. Apoplexy. You lose your speech for several days. You, a man of words, lose your words. It's worse than death. You recover. Partially. Speech returns, but slurred. Your hands tremble. You understand. There's no time left. You begin to rush. For the first time in your life. December 1638. The second stroke. This one is the last. You lie in bed, in your cell at Richelieu's palace. Only the cardinal is beside you. He holds your hand. A man who trusts no one is crying over your body. You try to say something. Your lips move, but there's no sound. For 30 years, you whispered in the ear of the most powerful man in France. Now you can't even whisper, goodbye. December 17th. You're 61 years old. You die the same way you lived, quietly. Richelieu stands by the bed and repeats, I have lost my only consolation and support. He will outlive you by 4 years, but those 4 years he'll be alone, like a ship without a helmsman. You're buried modestly. No state honors, no grand eulogies. Capuchin monks carry the coffin, a rough wooden box. You came into the world with nothing. You leave with nothing. Between the arrival and the departure, you redrew the map of Europe, sparked the greatest war of your century, and created a system of shadow power that's still being copied today. The sum of your life. 61 years, 30 of them in the shadow of power. You didn't enrich yourself by a single livre. Your possessions at the time of death, a robe, a crucifix, and a stack of encrypted letters. You could have bought a castle. You chose a cell. You could have become a king. You chose to be invisible. Infographic of your achievements. Conspiracies uncovered. At least 12. Agents recruited. Hundreds across Europe. Countries whose politics you altered. At minimum 6. France, Spain, England, Sweden, Germany, Italy. Wars you influenced. 3, including the 30 Years' War. People you sent to the scaffold through your reports. Dozens. People who knew your true role. A handful. You were the first gray cardinal in history. The one who gave a name to an entire phenomenon. After you, every shadow ruler would be called the same. Suslov in the USSR. Kissinger in America. Voloshin in Russia. But you were the first, and still the best. Because a true gray cardinal isn't the one who got exposed. It's the one the world only learned about after death. Why did you win? Because you understood the fundamental rule of power. The one who sits on the throne is a target. Conspirators shoot at him. The people hate him. His relatives try to overthrow him. A king is a storefront window. And you're the cash register in the back room. They can smash the window, never the register. You understood this at 22 and followed this principle until your last breath. You never held an official position. No title except Father Joseph. No seal except a monk's ring. No security except anonymity. And that's exactly why you couldn't be destroyed. You can't overthrow someone who doesn't stand. You can't take away something that formally doesn't exist. You were nobody. And that's precisely why you could do anything. When dukes demanded your head from Richelieu, he'd shrug. What Father Joseph? Just a simple monk. What can he do? And the dukes would leave in a rage, realizing they'd been outplayed. And you'd sit in your cell, reading their intercepted letters, and smile. The only luxury you allowed yourself. A smile in the dark. Nobody sees. Nobody knows. Perfect. And now, myths and truth. Myth. The Gray Cardinal is an evil genius. Truth, you were a patriot. Fanatical, cruel, unprincipled, but a patriot. Everything you did for France. You didn't steal a single coin. You lived like a pauper in a court of millionaires. You gave up family, name, future. You burned your life like a candle for a country that doesn't even remember your name. Myth. Gray Cardinals run the world. Truth. They run the people who run the world. That's an important difference. You never made decisions for Richelieu. You gave him information and options. The decision was always his. But you knew which option he'd choose because you knew him better than he knew himself. Myth. Richelieu was a puppet. Truth. He was a genius who used another genius. You were equals. 2 blades in one sheath. 2 minds tuned to the same frequency. Without him, you're an unknown monk. Without you, he's a brilliant but vulnerable politician. Together, you were unbeatable. Your alliance was the most effective partnership in the history of European politics. And the most terrifying. Gray Cardinals after you. Joseph Fouché, Napoleon's Minister of Police. He built an intelligence network that monitored every resident of Paris. He betrayed everyone he served, the Jacobins, the Directory, Napoleon, the Bourbons. He survived 4 revolutions and died in his own bed, rich and free. You would have despised him. He worked for himself. Ostermann under Peter the Great, a German who became Russia's vice-chancellor. He survived 5 rulers directing foreign policy from the shadows. His method, appearing unremarkable. At meetings, he stayed silent until everyone had spoken. Then he quietly said the decisive word. Suslov under Brezhnev, the chief ideologist of the USSR, a man in a gray suit who decided what 270 million people were allowed to think. He never smiled in photographs. He never gave interviews. He simply existed. And that was enough. All of them, your students, all of them used your formula. Be unseen, be irreplaceable, no more than everyone. But none of them reached your purity. You never betrayed anyone. You never enriched yourself. You served an idea. A monstrous one, perhaps, but an idea. They served only themselves. The tools of a gray cardinal. What did you have? Not an army, not a navy, not a treasury. You had 4 things. First, information. He who knows everything controls everyone. You built a system where every person is a data source. Nuns in convents, servants in palaces, merchants in markets, sailors in ports. Each sees their own piece. You assemble the picture. Second, patience. You waited for years. You never rushed. Every move was calculated 10 steps ahead. When your opponent thought he'd won, he'd already lost. He just didn't know it yet. Third, asceticism. You can't be bribed. You can't be seduced. You have no weaknesses to exploit. You don't drink. You don't gamble. You don't sleep with women. You're a monk, and that makes you invulnerable. Fourth, anonymity. You don't exist. No title, no target, no position, no accountability, no name, no enemies. Well, enemies exist, but they don't know who to aim at. 4 tools: information, patience, asceticism, anonymity. With this kit, you redrew the map of Europe, without firing a single shot from your own hands. What's left of you? Where your cell once stood is now an expensive Parisian neighborhood. Tourists sip coffee where you once read encrypted dispatches. Nobody knows. No plaque. No monument. Aldous Huxley, the author of Brave New World, wrote a book about you. Gray Eminence, a study in religion and politics. He called you a man who tried to reconcile politics and mystical religion. He was right. Your entire life, you were torn between prayer and murder, between God and the state, and you never chose. Gérôme's painting hangs in a museum. In it, you descend a staircase while courtiers step aside. It's the only portrait of you the world knows. And even in it, you're shown from behind. Face unseen. Perfect for a man who spent his whole life hiding his face. You left behind not monuments, but a system. Every intelligence agency in the world is your legacy. Every advisor who whispers in a president's ear is your student. Every person who wields power without holding office is your shadow. You died in 1638, but your method is immortal. A comparison. You're in an office, scrolling through the news. You think you know how the world works. Presidents, parliaments, elections. Everything's out in the open. Everything's transparent. How naive. Behind every president stands a person with no name. Behind every decision lies a memo no one has seen. Behind every war, a conversation no one heard. The world hasn't changed. The scenery has. Back then, a filthy robe and an encrypted dispatch. Now, a gray suit and an encrypted messenger. The essence is the same. Power belongs to the one who knows more than anyone else, and whom nobody knows. You play strategy games on your computer and think you understand politics. Father Joseph played a strategy game where the pieces were living people. The losers don't restart the match. They restart their lives, from scratch, on the scaffold. You'll live to see retirement. He burned out at 61. You'll leave behind a social media profile. He left behind a phrase used in every language on earth. Gray Cardinal. 3 words that explain all of politics for 5 centuries. And those words are his only monument. Facts that break the mold. Father Joseph wasn't gray. The capuchin robe was brown. But in 17th century French, gray meant inconspicuous, shadowy. So the nickname became more accurate than the truth. He wasn't a cardinal until his final year of life. For 30 years they called him the Gray Cardinal, and the red hat came just months before death. The irony, he became what they called him only when he could no longer use it. Richelieu was not the villain from Dumas' novel. He was one of Europe's greatest statesmen. Peter the Great, visiting his tomb, said he would have given such a minister half his kingdom if the man helped govern the other half. Father Joseph dreamed of a crusade until his last day. This wasn't a metaphor. He literally drafted plans for a military campaign against the Ottoman Empire. Routes, logistics, troop numbers. Was he insane? Maybe, but his madness moved history. After Father Joseph's death, Richelieu said, "If God had given me the choice to lose my right hand or Father Joseph, I would have kept going without the hand." That's not friendship. That's dependency. The most powerful man in France depended on a man with no name and no title. Rules of the Gray Cardinal that still work today. Rule 1. Never seek fame. Fame is a target on your forehead. The more people know about you, the easier it is to destroy you. Rule 2. Control information, not weapons. A sword kills one. A secret kills an army. Rule 3. Be indispensable, but not visible. If you can be replaced, you'll be discarded. If you're too visible, you'll be eliminated. The balance between these poles is the art of the Gray Cardinal. Rule 4. Don't get attached to things. You can't be bought if you don't need anything. You can't be blackmailed if there's nothing to take. Asceticism isn't a virtue. It's a survival strategy. Rule 5. Patience beats strength. A lion pounces at its prey and misses. A spider spins a web and waits. You are the spider. Rule 6. Know your master better than he knows himself. Anticipate his decisions. Suggest in a way that makes him think the idea is his. The best advice is the kind that looks like your own thought. 6 rules. Simple as a monastic vow. Deadly as poison in a glass. They're 400 years old and more relevant than any business seminar. Your shadow is longer than your life. 1638, you died. 1844, Dumas mentioned you in The Three Musketeers. 1 line. There was also, it is true, Father Joseph, but his name was never spoken above a whisper. That was enough for your nickname to enter every language on earth. 1941. Huxley wrote a book about you. He tried to understand how one person could combine deep religiosity with absolute ruthlessness. He found no answer. 2025. You're watching this video, and you realize Gray Cardinals haven't gone anywhere. They sit in offices with no nameplates, in buildings with no signs. They write the speeches that others deliver. They make the decisions that others are held accountable for. They run a world that doesn't even suspect they exist. The only difference is this. Father Joseph did it barefoot, by candlelight, with a quill in his hand. Modern Gray Cardinals do it in leather chairs, with a laptop and coffee. The tools have changed. The principle hasn't. Power still belongs to the one you can't see. One last question. Who is whispering right now in the ears of those who decide your fate? You don't know, and you won't find out. That's the point. A Gray Cardinal is a person you'll never see, because if you've seen him, he's no longer a Gray Cardinal. He's a failed amateur. The real players don't show themselves. They don't give interviews. They don't run social media accounts. They don't pose for photos with presidents. They simply are. Like gravity. You don't see it, but it holds you to the ground. Father Joseph died in a filthy robe, on a hard bed, without a penny to his name. He was buried in an unmarked grave. His bones turned to dust long ago, but his method lives on. Every time you hear the words Gray Cardinal, you're delivering his eulogy, the longest eulogy in history. 400 years, and still going. You lived this life. You were invisible. You were all-powerful. You were nobody. And that's why you could do anything. You are the Grey Cardinal. And this was your entire life. In the next episode, 2 fates to choose from. Option 1. You're an assassin, a Hashashin, a shadow with a dagger in the mountains of Persia. They pumped you full of hashish and showed you paradise. Now you kill sultans and crusaders with your bare hands because you believe that after death, you'll go back. The old man of the mountain is your god. Your poison is obedience. Option 2. You're a Janissary. You were stolen from a Christian family at 5 years old. You were reforged into the perfect soldier of the Ottoman Empire. You forgot your name, your mother, your god. Now you are the Sultan's weapon. And one day, the weapon will turn against its master. Vote in the comments. The most popular option becomes the subject of the next video. Subscribe. History isn't written in ink. It's written in blood and whispers. We show what textbooks hide. No censorship, no romance, just the truth that cuts. See you in the shadows. End of transmission.